So Webflow has released another very cool feature today. This is AI vibe coded code components, the ability to build code components directly in the designer. Now this was not released as a beta, at least I wasn't part of one, so this is my first look at it, and I decided to push it a little bit. I do have quite a bit of experience building code components directly and using Claude Code, using VS Code, delivering them the traditional way. So I have some experience with their capabilities and how to build some interesting features into them. And I wanted to know how much of that I can reproduce directly in the designer. So first let's look at what I created as my initial test project. Now this is a Three.js globe. I can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. I can see these pins on it. I can grab it and turn it. These pins are an SVG and a text label. And the thing that I wanted to see is a couple things: how well the designer would allow me to describe the process of what I wanted to build. And I wanted to know whether I would be able to slot the pins inside the code component. These pins are actually standard components. Each of them describes the SVG, the text, the latitude and longitude that I want to display, and it's the code component's job to pull that from the slot and to be able to then render it on the globe, including things like occluding things as they fade over the horizon, including things like wrapping longer labels, including things like taking the SVG and coloring it and then projecting it onto the sphere. I wanted to see if I could, rather than having the icon float, I just wanted the text to float. I wanted to see what it would look like, and I actually quite like it. Now, one of the more interesting things here is that I also wanted this to be CMS capable. So instead of slotting, I can just slot individual components if I just want specific pins, but I wanted to be able to drop a collection list inside the slot and slot the components inside the selection list, and so that I can actually render directly from the CMS and control everything. And it all worked. It took a little bit of creative prompting. It took a bit of understanding on how slots render, because there's a lot of React stuff happening there. So this isn't something that you'll likely be able to just prompt blindly without knowing a bit about how the rendered DOM and the shadow DOM actually work. At the same time, this was pretty cool that I was able to do it without ever touching VS Code or Claude or anything. This was done 100% in the designer. So let me show you what the designer experience looks like. Now, right now, I am on the CMS page because I created two versions of this, one where I'm slotting the CMS, one where I'm not. You can see I've got a code component dropped on the page. You can see the properties that I gave it. Now, it's got a background color so that I can choose what I want the sky to be. It's got the ability to control labels, rotation. Do I want it to auto rotate or not? Marker color, which is applied to all of the SVGs. And it has a default, if I don't specify an SVG, it has a nice little default styling of an animated icon that it shows. And then I also wanted to be able to control the height of the code component. Now, code components and regular components do not have a style panel. When I select the component, I do not have a style panel like I would have if I select the body. So here I could specify the height of the body. You wouldn't want to do that, but I could do that to any element. But to a component, the component itself is managing that. So, but I needed a way to control the height because I want to be able to use this either in a hero or perhaps as a full page view like I have here. So I decided to give it a height property and have the code component automatically parse that measurement and then apply it and then scale everything accordingly. It also has this nice little message here, preview to interact with the globe, just to make it clear that it's not going to show anything in this mode. I would actually have to preview it in order to see the data overlaid on it. And it's because of the way the data renders into the slots and how that's happening in the resulting DOM and so on. But I'm super impressed that this is all working in the designer in a way they can actually see and interact with. Now, the pins slot here currently contains this component, which is a collection list of pins. You can see here, there's the collection list. It is bound to a collection I just call locations. Each location, latitude, longitude, a name, and I do not have the SVG in the CMS, but I could put the SVG in the CMS because I want it to be current color. I want to be able to recolor and morph the SVG. I decided I don't want to use an image. An image it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit heavier lifting. I have to go get the file and load it from a resource and then apply it. I actually wanted the raw data. So if I were to put the SVG here, I would actually use a text property, a text field in the CMS and put the SVG code. Now, a quick side note on that. I really like Relume's work here. Relume has this excellent set of resources, these icons here, and I can look up, for example, map pin, something like that, and I can find something that I like, whatever I want. Let's say that I like this one here. Now, you can see there are a couple different ways to get this, but sometimes I just want the SVG. Now, the typical way to do that would be to download as SVG, then open the text file, copy the content. Now you've got the SVG source. But you can see there's also a copy as SVG button. Now, I've added that. I've added that through Signal's WFX browser extension here. So, there it is. I wanted to make sure it shows up. If you just search Signal WFX, you'll find it in the Chrome store here. You can just install it in your browser. It has quite a few different things. I need to isn't that re-enabled? I'm running the development version on my machine. It just means it's inactive on my computer from the Chrome store, which is correct, which is what I want. It does a lot of different things, but some of the things it does include things like adding this button here so that you can easily copy this to the clipboard. Now, that's really handy for this kind of use case. If I want to copy SVG string directly into the CMS, I can simply copy and paste directly into a field here. In this particular case, what I'm doing is I have them all set to exactly the same SVG. So if I select the component here, I can look at the property. I just pasted this in directly as an item. And the way it creates it, it's automatically set to current color, which means that it's just very easy for it to pull the data in. Everything is there, just in a text property. I use this technique a lot because I like to be able to manipulate the SVGs a lot, and this is a prime example of that. Now, there is a lot that would need to be done to complete this, but that wasn't really the point. Like, I'd want to be able to control labels and maybe have them fade based on depth, and maybe be able to select a specific item and have that fire an event so that a different part of the page could respond by loading photos from the CMS. There are all sorts of different possibilities as to what you could build. But this was a good starting point. And I want to show you a few things that I learned about the process, since this is a brand new experience for me as well. A couple of things. One is everything is managed through components. If I want to create a new code component, I start with a new component and generate with AI. When I do that, it gives me an initial prompt to generate it. It's going to pick the name. It's going to design the properties. It's going to design the functionality. I can do kind of anything I want with that. It does appear possible to also, I don't know if I can do it here, but I can add things like images. If I click this, I think it's going to, just open a file. So I'm able to upload. You can see here that what it's looking for is image files in the right-hand side. So I could give it a reference of like, hey, here's a really cool quiz. Here's a screenshot of it. I want to paste that in, which is going to be one of my next experiments to see how well that can work to create panes and slots and navigation and an end step quiz and then an end result, that kind of thing. These are fun. These are interesting things to build that involve code, and they are a good use case for code components. Now, once you do that, you will be brought into the component canvas and you'll be able to edit the components. Now, these are components that I've built. These are standard components, and then these are the code components, which are referred to as interactive. I think I like that name. That's new, but I think I like that. Now, you can see their code components because the icon has this little brackets next to it. It's quite small, but that is another way to identify it. To edit any of these, all I do is click on this open component icon, and I'm now editing it. And you can see the code appear, and you can see all on the right-hand side, the AI assistant opens, and the AI assistant allows me to manage my component. I scrolled off screen. My bad. Come back. There we go. All of my interactions, all of my prompting happen over here in the AI assistant after that initial prompt. So I can iterate and iterate and iterate. I can paste screenshot images in here. I can also publish the site, look at the results, take some HTML using DevTools, and take that piece of HTML and present it. As far as I can tell, the current iteration of the AI assistant cannot access websites on its own, but it may not tell you that it can't. So do be careful about that. I find it much more precise to actually, like, here's what the slotted content looks like. Here's what I need you to work with in the DOM, and explain to it that, hey, you're going to load this after hydration. Code component things. That's how I access the slot, pull the data, and then render the data on top. So there are some very cool things here. Now, one of the things that I found that's interesting is here I'm inside a component. Currently, in this first version, there isn't a way for me to take this code and, like, bind it to GitHub and then do commits, anything like that, which means that as a developer, it's a little worrying that I might break something, and then how do I get it back, right? So I can mitigate that. I could obviously copy and paste the code and then paste it into GitHub myself, and that's not a bad idea. So I could work here, but also have VS Code open, and I'm just pushing it into a GitHub repository just to make sure that it's safe. That is one option. Another is if I have the code component at a really good point, but I want to try something new. One of the options is to go and, let me see if I can show you here. I'm going to go back to components. I'm going to show you this first version I have here, which is 3D Globe. 3D Globe was pretty good, but 3D Globe, I didn't have the slot. I didn't have the slotted data. It was just directly imposing data from props. Not what I wanted long term, but I wasn't sure if I could make that jump. So I wanted to clone it. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. One way is I come here and I duplicate. Webflow will completely clone the component. It will give it a new name, 3D Globe 2, then, or whatever it is, it'll add a number to it. Once I'm working with it on the canvas with the AI assistant, I can rename it, I can change the properties, I can do anything I want. It's very good at giving me that flexibility. So that is one way to protect yourself against accidental breakage. At the very minimum, before you make major changes that could be breaking changes, you could just do this duplication just to back up your component, but then keep working on that initial one. That way, worst comes to worst, it's easier for you to go back. You don't have to dig through actual backups and hope that you can somehow get the code there. I don't know anything yet about how the AI assistant and the new AI code components feature interact with Webflow's site backups. It might be part of it. It might not be part of it. I have no idea. I have no information on that. So think of it a little bit like a developer. Back up your work yourself if you need to, and that gives you a lot more control. Another thing to note here is that it can only work on components that already exist. So what I mean by that is here I'm in 3D Globe 2. I can use the AI assistant, which knows about code components now, to do anything I want to any of the existing code components. I cannot have it duplicate the current component, create a new one, and then edit the new one in a different way. I have to do the duplication myself, and then the AI assistant can see it, and then the AI assistant can make modifications to it. So one of the things I did initially, before I discovered this duplicate capability, which is perfect, is I created a new component, and the initial prompt was clone everything from this other component and create a new one. And that worked beautifully. That was how I actually created a couple of my clones initially. Once you do that, it can see everything. Now, I'm able to, for example, my first version of the globe pin was another code component. That was overly complex. It complicates things because it has a shadow DOM. All I really want it to do is act as a data vehicle for latitude, longitude, label, and SVG. That's it. So it didn't make sense to go that complex. But it was quite cool that the AI assistant was able to generate and work with all those components and understand how they work together. My job then was to tell it what I want, slot them appropriately, and then create the feedback loop where it could see the rendered HTML and understand how everything gets rendered into the final page and how that impacts the code component structure, particularly around slotted content. All of that was really good. It does not seem to be able to, at this point, manage the regular components, so I created these pins myself. They are very simple. All they are is, here's a pin. It is literally a div. Actually, the pin that I'm using, that's all it is a div with some props on it. So the props look like, and I have to close the AI assistant to see this, but the props are right here. The pin, latitude, longitude, label, SVG. Now, also very interesting, when I had the discussion with the AI assistant, it was able to give me, and I said, hey, why not use a regular component here? All I need is a div with some data on it so that you can easily extract it from the light DOM, pull the data, render it onto the globe. It liked that idea, and it recommended these property names or these attribute names on the div. So I just followed them. It was just convenient. It already has come up with a recommendation. All I need to do is construct it now. So I quickly whipped that up, dropped it in the slot, and then it was able to complete the build. Very, very impressed for a version 1 of something that is quite complex. This is pretty impressive. You can actually do quite a bit with it. So I'm going to play a lot more, particularly with functional things like quote calculators, more work with things like real estate maps, possibly some things like 3D rendering of basic models of like a floor plan, that kind of thing. Things that are practical but simple. I think the biggest strength at this point for the AI generated code components feature is probably in the realm of components that you want to run on this one site. Something you're building for this particular site. I haven't pushed what it can do with styling. I don't know if it's pulling in style tokens from the main design system. Here I started with a blank canvas anyway, so it didn't have anything to pull. But it will be interesting to see how good it is at that in this very first release. If it doesn't have that capability yet, then I'm sure it will quite soon, and it will be able to pull in your design systems, your styles, your headings, your variables, and so on, and use them in creating your quiz or your map or your whatever you want to do. So very good. Great job, Webflow. I'm really enjoying all these new capabilities.